got me all discombobulated. Thank you. Welcome to the Clearing Congress. I'm awfully glad you're here, too. This is really a rather memorable occasion. This is the first Congress where we can go straight down the line and say, this is how it is done. These are the important facts. These parts of Scientology cannot be done without. And these other parts we can sure forget about. At this Congress, we can bury all of my crimes. Without even a headstone. For 8 years now, we've been struggling along, trying to make the grade, trying to keep the show on the road, and trying to alter this thing called civilization. And civilization, that collection of gadgets which makes everybody helpless. And we have made an enormous amount of progress. And that progress is due as much to you as to me. So thank you. 8 years ago, it was a pretty thin look. A terrible fact arose and smacked us in the face. Yes, I had been able to handle some human beings in such a way as to produce a new state of being. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about this state of being if I hadn't done it. But then I started to explain how it was done. The people I explained it to were not stupid. That had nothing to do with it. It's just that the language and selection of importances had not yet been brought to bear to communicate the subject adequately. We had in Book 1 simply no more, no less than a rather adequate description of the reactive mind. The mental image picture, the engram, the secondary, and so forth. We had ways to run these things, but those ways were not the ways used clearly. Now that's very interesting that I could be guilty of an oversight of that degree. And only having accomplished the fact, again, and communicated it successfully, can I bring up this much guilt. I have a guilt complex, of course. And here we have a state of affairs where all of these materials can be communicated, where the elements are found to be rather simple, where the general state of affairs in telling somebody how to do it is rather easy, and in addition to that, we have ways and means of changing a person's viewpoint sufficiently so that he can clear somebody. And that takes some doing. That's rather interesting, because there are some people who start out to set somebody free, is what they think. They think, well, I'll set this fellow free, and then halfway through the intensive they say, well, I don't know. I'm not so sure. Should I set him free or shouldn't I? Well, in view of the fact that I'm dead in my head yet, he might go buzzing around. Well, he might take over my life, my body. Gee whiz, he might even get down to assuming my Social Security card, and that would be terrible. And therefore, I don't know. And at that moment, you get the introduction of a few minor, innocent flubs. Little flubs don't amount to much. Knock an ashtray off the desk. Inadvertently tell me some way you couldn't possibly help anybody. We're all guilty of it, sometime or another. I have found myself auditing somebody who has a criminal record, the like of which the FBI never dreamed of. The FBI thinks there's such a thing as a criminal mind. That's always a big joke to me. There's a criminal mind and there's a non-criminal mind. I never could figure this out because they've never shown me any non-criminal minds. Oh, it's a terrible thing to say, very uncharitable, but it's simply it's simply a comment on J. Edgar. J. Edgar's an awfully good guy, stupid but awfully good. Now, where we have human beings, we have human beings. Now, that profound statement needs a little amplification. What do you mean by a human being? Well, where everybody is so equal, and where everybody has the idea that everybody is so crazy, we get a human being. But let's look this over. Let's look this over carefully. Let's see a society which is dedicated to the proposition that all men are equal. Jefferson didn't say that. He said all men are created equal under law, or with equal rights under law. He didn't say all men were equal. If you'd gone up to Tom and said, Tom, well, what's this I hear about you being equal? He'd say, to whom? But this proposition of super equality gets into the wheels when we get a super agreement going, an obsessive agreement. We all have to agree with some hidden mores that we know not what of. And if we don't know what this hidden standard is that we're in agreement with, then the only thing we can do is go into agreement with all of the things we think exist. And if we think some of these things exist, whether they do or not, we still agree with them, and we get the lowest order philosophic concept, which is everything is equal to everybody, and you get the science of physics and modern civilization.